So if Coriolis is just Earth turn underneath objects, would that mean everything deviates west?
Yes! That's exactly what it would mean.
Coriolis.
And it doesn't.
And it does not. You don't go up in a balloon and find that everything west of you is coming to you, do you? No, not angular retention of velocity. You were wrong. You weren't to concede it last time on Thursday, and I want you to concede it now. Taking you through it in baby steps, Coriolis is not retention of velocity, and inserting that the projectile must travel straight to have an appearing to curve path doesn't mean it's retaining any angular velocity. I've given you the example and broken it down for you. Do you understand it?
I understand your example.
Right. So Coriolis effect is not the retention of angular momentum.
I don't agree, but okay.
Do you mean you don't agree?
Dude.
I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate.
To be fair, I like Virus better than Rumpus and Ed and Chikey and all those clowns. He's at least somewhat decent, or a little more decent to deal with. I don't care if you others are listening.
Oh, yeah. Some of these people are just straight trash to deal with, like the dude we were talking to earlier. What was his name? Jazza? Oh, gosh.
So, Akenbars, what is the Coriolis effect?
An apparent deflection caused by the conservation of angular momentum over a spinning surface.
Which type of angular momentum?
You can't make this shit up, folks. You can't.
No. Nathan took him through it the other day.
Are we
He agreed
talking
to
about
everything.
angular momentum or apparent angular momentum?
Yeah, exactly. Those two statements, Converse, are in complete contrast. So you paused,
Yeah, I don't.
and then
I
strapped
don't-
on the description of something totally different. So you were getting there, and then you just intentionally convoluted it. And now I know you've had to do that intentionally. That's what the little pause was.
Nah, I was
Yeah, he
actually
knows.
confusing the word. When I wanted to say conservation, my mouth wanted to say angular for some reason. I knew that wasn't the first word to say.
But if it's conserving something, it's not drifting apart. It's conserving it.
It's still an apparent drift. It's an apparent drift.
So not conserving then, drifting apart. That's what drift is. It drifting apart.
No, the object is still going straight. It just appears to drift.
Yeah, as you turn underneath it.
At different speeds.
So how does
I guess.
conservation of angular momentum or linear momentum have anything to do with that?
Doesn't.
Well, I mean, okay,
But
so
Virus,
why would an
Virus,
object
you understand that
deviate
the
to the
observation of that apparent drift is the Coriolis.
It's optical.
Do you get that, Virus?
It's not.
Just
not.
just
Yeah, we explained this to you the other
Can
day.
you let him
about
answer?
angular
Can you let him
momentum
answer?
and linear
Hello,
momentum.
3
He
people
said
on him.
thank you.
Hello. Go ahead, Virus.
Fuck!
Let him answer.
I didn't finish.
For the love of fuck, John.
For the love of fuck!
Go ahead, Virus.
I'm usually pretty concise about it.
I can't remember
What
what
was the question again? Now
I couldn't even remember either,
sidetracked.
Virus. There was so much rumpusing that I couldn't remember the question to put back to you. But it was something.
Yeah, QE, keep
Angular
rumpusing me.
momentum, Coriolis
Just let
effect.
chocolate. Oh God, I got to
All
control
right,
that.
right. I'll restate it.
Thank you.
Virus, you understand that the Coriolis effect is the observation of that apparent drift. It's not the apparent drift. or whatever the object is doing that you're talking about. Conserving momentum, not conserving momentum, it doesn't matter. The observation of that apparent drift is the Coriolis. You get that?
Okay, that's the reason. That's the reason I said what I said first, and then I said because of the conservation of angular momentum.
Okay.
Well, you not listening?
Let me try. Okay, so you've conceded to Chocolate that you understand that the drift described in Coriolis is the not actual deflection. You understand that the observation in Coriolis is something that's not actually happening, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. So, in terms of what Coriolis actually is, there's nothing to be retained because it's something that's an effect of something not actually happening. It's merely you turning underneath it. So, you turning underneath it.
No, I don't agree. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You turning underneath something and what appears to happen as a result has nothing to do with the projectile retaining anything. Because the observation is merely, as they're trying to get across to you, the rest of the panel is trying to get across to you, it's observational. It's you watching something as you turn underneath. And what it does as a result is not actual. Now, the fact that, let's say, you're spinning underneath the lamppost and the lamppost is definitely coming towards you, if the lamppost was overlapping the roundabout and at head height, you'd eventually hit it. And that would be a very actual effect, but only occurring because you're spinning towards it. Not because the lamppost retains some velocity, angular or otherwise. It's only an effect because you're spinning underneath that's described in Coriolis. You've conceded you understand that. It's a not actual effect. So if it's not actual, there's nothing to retain in angular velocity terms.
The object is moving. It's not a stationary object.
Can be.
I told you.
It can be. If I describe it with a
stationary
okay,
object.
no worries. You can have, if you insist that the item has some sort of straight path to be bent, you appreciate that the path of the item in your description has a perfectly straight path. You appreciate that, yeah?
Yeah.
But you turning underneath it causes the straight path to appear, that's not actually, appear curved. You appreciate that too?
Somewhat, but that only describes the motion to the west, not the motion to the east.
I haven't given any directions to it. Let's just keep it simple. Why are you giving things directions? Doesn't need it. We just need a rotating platform with something that's in your description and insisting to be in motion, travelling straight. You've conceded, yeah, I understand it's travelling straight. So, okay, I can throw a ball over a roundabout. Doesn't matter which direction I throw the ball. We're going to concede that there's two people standing on either side of a roundabout. You understand that, right? And they're throwing a ball back and forth in a straight line. But if you observe it whilst turning underneath on the roundabout, the ball seems to curve. It's not actually curving. It's just because you're turning underneath the ball. You understand that?
Yeah, but direction also plays
okay,
a
I just
big
need a
part in
yes.
this as well,
Just need a
too.
yes. There's an end conclusion. So the ball in this example, what angular momentum or velocity is it retaining when it travels straight and appears to curve from your vantage point turning underneath it? It isn't, right? It's travelling straight. It's not retaining any angular velocity of anything. It's travelling straight and only seeming to curve. But the seeming to curve bit comes from you turning underneath. No velocity to retain.
Well, if that was the case, everything would deviate west, and there would be no east.
Why did you keep going on to this west? Just why are you taking it onto something away from my example? It seems unreasonable. I've got an example.
Okay,
two people. I've got to do it step by step of you so that you don't wander off into the weeds of something travelling west. Let's try again. Step by step, get a concession for every single bloody word if I have to, Virus. So, roundabout, spinning, playground. You there with me conceptually? Don't talk through me, just concede. Don't babble on after you say yes either. You understand what a roundabout in a playground looks like?
Yep.
You understand that there is no direction, east, west, south, north, relevant to this example at this stage. Just a roundabout in a playground.
Yeah, it's just
right, so I don't want to hear anything about travelling west after my example's given, and I have to break it down step at a time. Right, roundabout and playground. We're going to have 3 people involved in this example, 2 of which are standing on the ground, not spinning, opposite each other with the roundabout between them. Do you understand?
I understand.
Right. And they're going to throw a ball between them. So it goes over the roundabout and gets caught in a straight line. Every single time it gets thrown and caught, it travels straight. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Now you tell me what angular velocity that ball's going to retain.
Who threw it?
The people on the bloody example that I've just given you and you've conceded to. Two people standing either side of a roundabout. My God, have I got to get you to concede it 6 times in a row before you'll understand the example? Two people, slow down.
I understand your example.
So 2 people standing over a roundabout, throwing a ball back and forth. That's my example so far. So,
I understand your example.
So now you've got to tell me what angular momentum the ball's conserving.
I just told you from the person that threw it.
So angular, it's got some angular retention of velocity when they throw it in a straight line, has it?
It keeps the speed from the person that threw it.
And that's got anything to do with angular rate of turn or velocity, has it? When they throw it in a straight line? It doesn't have any...
The person that threw it...
It's not moving in a curve.
It is turning.
Right, why are you talking through me? It's not got any angle in my example. It's just moving straight. Now, the only thing that's going to be turning in my example, it's yet to turn, I might add. I'm going to have to break it down this much. I haven't spun the roundabout yet, have I? So,
if you haven't spun it yet, then it's going to be linear.
I haven't spun it. I've just got 2 people. Okay. Fucking hell. Let's take 2 people in a park, standing in front of each other with no roundabout, and throwing a ball to each other. Do they have any sort of angular retention or velocity or anything involved in throwing a ball to each other?
Linear velocity.
Tell me, what angular velocity? What the bloody hell are you babbling about? It's just 2 people throwing to... Have I really got to take it to this extreme? This is really frustrating. I'm describing someone throwing a ball back and forth. That's it.
Linear velocity.
So not angular then?
They're not moving.
So, yeah, that's my point. Finally. So, because they're not moving, we can understand that the projectile is not going to have anything to be concerned about with angular retention of velocity of any description then. Yes?
Yeah, they're not. They're not.
Oh, right. So, ball is thrown back and forth, no angular velocity to concern ourselves with. Now we're going to install... Shut up. Now we're going to install a roundabout underneath them. They haven't moved. They're just going to continue throwing a ball while a construction worker installs a roundabout underneath them. Bearing in mind, you've already conceded the ball's got no angular momentum to concern ourselves with. Now we've got a roundabout underneath these 2 individuals throwing a ball straight line back and forth. And someone gets onto the roundabout and watches the ball seem to curve because they turn underneath. Now that is Coriolis effect and has absolutely nothing to do with the trajectory of the ball and only an observation based on the person's momentum when they're spinning, observing it seem to take a curved path.
Okay.
Right, so retention of angular velocity. Nothing to do with Coriolis effect. Ball thrown over roundabout. Man gets on roundabout, watches ball seem to curve as he turns underneath. When you guys start detailing the retention of angular velocity in the projectile, it has absolutely nothing to do with the Coriolis effect, only observed if you turn underneath something not attached. In this example, the ball thrown over the top. Where's the... No, it's okay. Where in my example is the ball, the thing we're looking at, appearing to curve as we spin under it with Coriolis deviation? That's it curving when it's not. Where's the ball retaining angular momentum? The ball that's travelling in a straight line.
They're spinning, aren't they?
No, they're not. They're not on the fucking roundabout, you dumb shit. Did I not break this example down with them throwing it in a straight line with no roundabout, then introducing the roundabout being built underneath them? No, they're not spinning. How stupid are you? No, they're not.
So how about we use a better example?
Why are you asking me how about we do a different example? No retention of angular velocity in the ball thrown over the roundabout. Not time for a new example and a load of fundy muting.
I'm answering your question.
So the ball's not retaining any angular momentum then. It's not Coriolis effect.
How about the roundabout is a horrible example of Coriolis in the first place?
It's the defining feature of Coriolis, having a rotating reference frame. A horrible example. It's the defining aspect of it. Don't tell me anything. You're starting to piss me off royally. Telling me that a roundabout's not a good example.
Really?
It is the example. That is Coriolis, you dumb shit. You don't know what Coriolis effect is?
If you say so.
No, I know so. You're telling me it's the retention of angular momentum. It isn't. I've given you an example and broken it down with someone throwing a ball back and forth and then having a roundabout built underneath them as they continually throw the ball back and forth while you start to interrupt me at the point that you've conceded already. You've already conceded. Ball thrown back and forth, no retention of angular momentum. Roundabout installed underneath, guy spinning on it, sees Coriolis effect. Doesn't suddenly have the ball introducing angular momentum to it. It's not done anything different. The only thing different is you spinning underneath it. That's what gives you Coriolis effect. Now, for Earth to have Coriolis effect, like the roundabout, Earth would need to be spinning under the ball. That would mean that I throw a ball into the air and the Earth turns underneath the ball. And that would mean that when I throw the ball, like if I was on the roundabout and throw a ball off it, it would appear to curve away from me. Now, on a spinning Earth, that means I throw a ball in the air and it would whiz away from me at whatever rate the Earth is turning underneath it. That's what Coriolis effect is. You turning underneath. And that's what we'd have to have on Earth. It's claimed we do. It's claimed we see 15 degrees an hour deviation as Earth turns underneath to give us Coriolis effect. The only problem is, nothing's drifting away from us at 15 degrees an hour. You throw a ball in the air on the equator and it fly away from you at 1,000 miles an hour because you're turning underneath it. That simply doesn't happen. There is no Earth-based Coriolis effect. An Earth-based Coriolis effect would be exactly the same as my roundabout Coriolis effect. Earth isn't attached to the ball, therefore it's spinning underneath it. Well, on a massively rotating reference frame of a spinning Earth, you've got 1,000 miles an hour drift on the equator. Something we absolutely do not see. Earth is not turning. There is no Earth-based Coriolis effect.
So if Coriolis is just Earth turn underneath objects, would that mean everything deviates west?
Yes! That's exactly what it would mean.
And it doesn't.
And it does not. You don't go up in a balloon and find that everything west of you is coming to you, do you?
That's not how Coriolis works.
That is what Coriolis is. You on a rotating platform turning underneath stuff not attached. So it's the globe Earth turning underneath stuff not attached. If that's what we have, and it's claimed we do. It's claimed Earth has Coriolis effect. Therefore, on the equator, you throw a ball in the air and it would fly away from you at 1,000 miles an hour. Not because you can throw a ball at 1,000 miles an hour, but because it's claimed we have Coriolis effect. That's Earth turning underneath.
How much Coriolis is directly at the equator?
Wow.
None! There is no Coriolis effect on Earth. We're not turning. I've just explained this. If there was drift at 15 degrees an hour, that's 1,000 miles an hour on the equator, you throw a ball in the air and it flies away from you at 1,000 miles an hour because you're turning underneath it. That's what's supposed to happen on a turning Earth, and it doesn't. There is no 15 degrees an hour. Nothing's drifting away from me. The ball doesn't drift away at 15 degrees an hour, and it should if we're turning underneath to have Coriolis effect.
Okay.
That's what Coriolis effect is.
So according to the globe, there should be the most Coriolis at the equator.
Yeah, 15 degrees an hour. They change it into an angular speed to make it less overt when you translate it into a mile per hour speed. So 15 degrees an hour is translatable to any part of the sphere. Well, 1,000 miles an hour on the equator, suddenly people would raise their eyebrows when you point out that you'd launch a drone and it would disappear at a rate of 1,000 miles an hour as you turn underneath it while it's hovering in an inertial reference frame. That doesn't happen. But yeah, 1,000 miles an hour on the equator, if it was real, it isn't.
You might want to look up what the globe claims happens at the equator when it comes to Coriolis.
At 15 degrees an hour drift is what they claim, you fucktard. I'll tell you, and you can now deny it, what the globe claims, because I absolutely know what they claim at the equator. They claim there's a 15 degrees an hour drift as Earth turns underneath. That's what they claim. You denying that?
What I'm denying is there being Coriolis directly on the equator.
It wouldn't matter where you are. The speed would be the only thing that would change, and at the equator it'd be 1,000 miles an hour drift. That's 15 degrees an hour as Earth turns underneath. That's what you'd have. You'd have stuff drifting away from you at 1,000 miles an hour if there was a Coriolis deflection. The deflection, which is claimed to be there, Coriolis deviation, 15 degrees an hour, is me throwing a ball in the air and it flying away at 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. Something that absolutely does not happen. You're telling me I don't know the globe claim? Yeah, 15 degrees an hour at the equator, 1,000 miles an hour, mate. Yeah, I do know. Just doesn't happen.
Virus.
That's all.
Isn't your whole
awesome.
globe spinning? Virus?
Hold on, say that again.
Isn't your whole globe spinning?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So why would you think we would only see Coriolis at the equator?
No, he told Nathan in chat that Nathan doesn't know that there's zero Coriolis on the equator.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
I can buy it. I can
Yeah.
buy this. Can you
Well,
hear me?
let me just correct him once more. Hold on, Brian.
Thing is spinning out of
Guys, calm down.
control here, guys.
We'll get Brian next because it sounded like he had an actual question. But let me just correct him first. There's claimed to be 15 degrees an hour everywhere, virus. And you can translate, depending on your claim to be begging the question, latitude and longitude position, how fast that would be.
Okay.
1,000 miles an hour on the equator, 15 degrees an hour. That's what's claimed. It just doesn't happen.
Okay. If you say so.
No, I know so. Balls don't drift away at 1,000 miles an hour when I throw them in the air. I've been on the equator.
It shouldn't.
They should. That's what Coriolis deviation is. It's you turning underneath. When my roundabout example was explained to you in simple terms, we didn't have any Coriolis deviation until the guy started turning underneath the ball. Until then, it was just two people throwing a ball back and forth. Then the guy turning underneath gave us Coriolis. So to have Coriolis, at the equator or otherwise, Earth would be turning underneath stuff, virus. Not if I say so. That's what your rhetoric is. It just doesn't happen. We're not turning underneath anything.
Okay.
Earth isn't spinning.
According to the globe, which way is the deflection in the southern hemisphere?
Sorry, it makes no difference. It's 15 degrees an hour everywhere. It's the same everywhere. You're not listening. It's the same everywhere.
So everything goes in one direction no matter where you at on the earth.
No, it's your fucking claim of a globe Earth that spins, you stupid muppet. I don't think we move at all. Why are you telling me about my claim about what direction it would move in? It's not my claim, you dipshit. You idiots on the globe, let's get it clear for all the Simon Dan wannabe parrots who suddenly think that every defeated claim they make suddenly becomes my argument. No, you moron. I don't think Earth's moving one smegging inch. You, on the other hand, think there's a 15 degrees an hour turn of the Earth, and that would give us Coriolis deflection as stuff turns underneath. And that would mean I throw a ball in the air on the equator and it flies away at 1,000 miles an hour. That's your claim that doesn't happen. I can debunk it by throwing a ball in the air on the equator and catching it. As in, I throw it up and it doesn't fly away at 1,000 miles an hour, as per your claim that it should, but doesn't.
I never made that claim.
It's not my claim, it's yours. You think it's funny? You don't have any drift. Laugh it up. Earth's not turning. Laugh it up.
This is very funny.
Yeah, laugh it up. Earth's not turning. You don't have any...
There we go. Laugh it up.
Listen, this numpty thinks that in the northern hemisphere, the Earth is spinning from west to east. In the southern hemisphere, it's spinning from east to west. That's what he thinks. He doesn't know it yet.
That is not what I think. That is not what I think. Don't.
With the
why
direction
would you
of
even lie on me like that?
No. Let me just ask him. I'll establish it quickly. Do you think the direction of drift in as the Earth turns underneath is different in the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere? Is the direction of drift different north hemisphere, southern hemisphere, as Earth turns underneath at 15 degrees an hour, as is claimed to happen, but gives us no drift to observe? Do you think it's different north to south hemisphere, the drift that we don't observe at 15 degrees an hour?
Yeah, no, it's too early for all that fast talk.
I didn't understand.
Fast talk.
I missed that.
Is the drift that in your mind, right? When I throw the ball in the air, yeah, and it's supposed to fly away at 1,000 miles an hour on the equator. Let's say I move north a little bit, and it's supposed to fly away at 900 miles an hour. Now, no ball's flying away from us ever at any point, anywhere. But let's just pretend for a second that that does happen. That the ball does drift at 15 degrees an hour at whatever speed above or below the equator. Do you think the direction of drift that we don't see is different in the north and south hemisphere?
Yeah.
And how much okay, no, it's okay. And how much of the drift that we don't see in the northern hemisphere is different from the drift that we don't see in the northern hemisphere? Or southern, whichever I didn't say last.
Direction.
So which direction is it not going to be showing drift in?
I mean, you should know this. You're the one that's the Coriolis expert.
Oh, okay, I do. I had an example, and it was sent to me by one of your compadres. His name's Simon Dan. Now, given the question of how much drift we should see, depending on which hemisphere, his example is now on screen for my audience. An example with no drift virus. So, when pointed out to Dan that we don't have any turn of the Earth underneath at 15 degrees now, nothing's drifting apart, Dan showed me an example with a guy not drifting. So I'm saying if this guy was in the northern hemisphere, would he be drifting or not drifting differently in the north hemisphere? Is that what you're saying? He'd not drift differently north and south hemisphere, right? I don't know.
Yeah, that guy shouldn't be drifting.
Shouldn't be drifting. So you're saying no 15 degrees an hour Coriolis deflection, no drift, no 15 degrees an hour virus. He shouldn't be drifting.
That guy shouldn't be drifting because he shouldn't be experiencing any Coriolis.
Sorry, virus. Shouldn't be drifting at 15 degrees an hour. He shouldn't be.
Yeah, exactly. According to the globe, that guy should not drift.
No, that's wrong, virus. According to the globe, he should drift at 15 degrees an hour. He should bounce up, and if he's on the equator, the Earth should turn underneath at 1,000 miles an hour, causing him to appear to drift away at 1,000 miles an hour at 15 degrees an hour. That's what is claimed. You think the claim is 15 degrees an hour of drift that we don't see on a turning Earth? Is that what you think?
No. I just think that guy should not be going. That guy is not going through the situation where we will see a Coriolis drift.
What that means, we're not in a situation with Earth turning underneath. Then welcome to flat stationary Earth. So he's not in a situation where Earth turns underneath.
according to the globe,
That situation would require 2 reference frames, right, Virus? So what you're saying is we don't have 2 reference frames?
You can have as many reference frames as you want.
Oh, no, you can't. And they're not our reference frames. Quote, Simon Dan. You and your reference frames have been ruined. So you can't have as many reference frames as you require to claim Earth turns underneath to give us drift with examples that don't have drift. That's your problem with your reference frames. You need to claim things are drifting. But you seem to be telling us that the globe says no drift, even though there's claimed to be 15 degrees an hour of it that doesn't get shown anywhere ever.
He don't know me, so he wasn't talking to me.
No, he's talking to me. He was telling me, he's massive representative of your side, Virus. You, on the other hand, are an absolute nobody. But Dan says, and if Simon Dan says you and your reference frames have been ruined, then Simon Dan, globe representative, says you and your reference frames have been ruined. You know, I mean, I've asked him about it and he gave me some answer about diffraction. So he didn't really explain it, but I know I don't have any and you do, and we're arguing about your reference frames currently. The current reference frames that are giving drift at 15 degrees an hour that you say globe says we shouldn't see, even though we're supposed to see 15 degrees an hour of it, Virus. We still haven't squared that circle of you saying the globe says we shouldn't see drift when the globe's supposed to turn underneath at 15 degrees an hour. That gives you 15 degrees an hour drift that you say we shouldn't see.
Just what you say. The globe says you shouldn't see it.
Shouldn't see 15 degrees an hour drift. Let's just clarify again, Virus. You're saying the globe says we shouldn't see 15 degrees an hour drift. Who's asserting that we should see it then, Virus?
I say the globe says we should not see Coriolis drift with that guy bouncing on the trampoline.
No, Virus. If he was on the equator, he'd drift out 1,000 miles an hour as Earth turned underneath him.
The globe also claims that there is 0 Coriolis on the equator.
So they're saying no 15 degrees an hour drift as Earth turns underneath. That's not what the globe claims, Virus. So if you're saying the globe claims there is no 15 degrees an hour drift, who does claim that there's 15 degrees an hour then, Virus? Where would we get this notion from if you're saying the globe claims no 15 degrees an hour drift? Who claims there is 15 degrees an hour then? Is it us that claims that, or is it you?
It depends. What are you talking about?
Who claims
if that? You're talking about at the equator, then the globe says there's no Coriolis at the equator.
So you're saying the globe claims no 15 degrees an hour turn of the Earth at the equator?
No Coriolis.
When you're on the equator, the stars do not rotate. But it's only when you move south or north of the equator that the stars rotate in the same direction.
So, I'll take him there. Fine. Good idea.
BS.
That's okay. Virus. On the equator, do you believe that the sun fails to rise and set, as it is claimed the Earth rotates underneath at 15 degrees an hour to cause a Coriolis deflection in the sun? Are you saying we don't see an apparent deviation of the sun at 15 degrees an hour on the equator? Do we have permanent daylight or permanent nighttime on the equator? Or do we see 15 degrees an hour claimed to be drift as we turn underneath? You think sunrises and sunsets don't happen on the equator then? Because we're not seeing Coriolis.
Wow, I don't know how y'all came up with that, but nah,
that's Coriolis effect. Like how I came up with it, that's your rhetoric that I understand and you don't. How I came up with it, I understand that you claim, for about the 20th time on this show, that there's a 15 degrees an hour turn of the Earth as we turn underneath. And you've just told us that there is no drift on the equator. And according to your claim, Earth's turning underneath at 15 degrees an hour. And one of the things not attached is the sun. So I'm asking, given that you're saying no drift on the equator, so the sun doesn't rise and set as it's claimed by you, Earth turns underneath at 15 degrees an hour. Because that's also Coriolis effect, the sun rising and setting in your model. You don't think that happens, though? No Coriolis on the equator, you bonehead.
So the sun seems to deflect?
It's your model, your claim, your 15 degrees an hour deviation that you're saying doesn't happen on the equator. Now, I'm saying if you say there's no drift on the equator, then the sun would never move, because in your model, it's the very drift of the Earth turning underneath at 15 degrees an hour. By the way, that would mean that a ball would drift away at 1,000 miles an hour. We'll come back to that. But also the sun, second reference frame, turning. Not because it's moving, right? Because Earth's turning underneath claimed to be 15 degrees an hour. So no deviation then. Sun not moving. Fifth time I've asked. Or is your assertion that there's no Coriolis drift on the equator a stupid thing to say, given that the sun's definitely moving on the equator, as it's claimed in your model we turn underneath? Once you've conceded that the sun definitely is going to rise and set on the equator, we'll move on to the fact the ball isn't flying away as I turn underneath it. But we've got to concede first that your stupid idiot notion that there's no Coriolis on the equator in your model and world that spins 15 degrees an hour underneath stuff not attached. It's just your misunderstandings and misapprehensions about what Coriolis isn't, because you don't understand it. Sun's still rising and setting.
Does the globe ever claim that things deviate to the east?
Yeah, the sun in this example, maybe a sixth repetition, Virus. The sun is supposed to be deviating at 15 degrees an hour. That includes the equator. You are an idiot who have said there is no Coriolis at the equator. The sun, however, in your globe stupidity, is also an effect described with Coriolis. Given you're saying there isn't any at the equator, how the fuck does the sun rise and set in your stupid world of turning Earth then? Oh, what's that? There is Coriolis on the equator. You're just dumb as shit. Take your time, Dumbo.
Coriolis was an apparent deflection.
Yeah, of the sun, seventh time maybe, seventh time. Yeah, the sun in this example is in your model appearing to deviate at 15 degrees an hour at the equator. That's Coriolis effect, you stupid shit. How many times? Do you need it 8 times? Do you need it 8 times? Yeah, we've still got an apparent deflection in your model of a globe Earth that spins at 15 degrees an hour, with the sun deviating as a result. According to your claim, the Earth spins underneath at 15 degrees an hour. You've said that's not true at the equator. You're just stupid. I just need you to say, yeah, I was wrong. There is supposed to be Coriolis effect. So I can pummel you with a ball that's not flying away from your hand 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. Yeah, laugh it up, share your pain. Share your pain while I point out that, no, you still have Coriolis at the equator, or the sun wouldn't be moving. You're just still yet to concede it because you're a weasel.
I'm in tears. I'm sorry. I appreciate you having me on this show.
Is it because this is
really appreciate
It's
it.
not
so
mutual.
pathetic that you don't even understand your own claims, bro?
Don't say it like we don't know what we're talking about. You should be ashamed of yourself.
I didn't say it like y'all ain't know what you was talking about. I said I'm having fun and I appreciate you putting me on the show. That's all I just said.
Yeah, that's a nice deflection.
Yeah, could you please stop wasting our time? We're trying to tell you the basics and you're just not getting it for an hour. And now you're laughing about it? You shouldn't be laughing. You should be crying.
This is funny.
Or being sad for being this stupid. You give concessions
you're not doing the globe
and
any
immediately you contradict yourself after that. Are you listening to yourself, man?
Okay, so if Globe claims that it's just Earth turned underneath, then why
in the middle of my example, Virus? Virus. You just laughed rather than addressing my example.
Why are you cutting me off?
Yeah, because you just laughed. I asked a question. I was in the middle of an example that we're still yet to get to a conclusion on. Your hysterical laughter doesn't mean I'm not going to readdress and get us back on the issue. So, the sun, Virus, is an example of Coriolis deflection on a claim to be spinning ball Earth at the equator. Do you concede you were wrong to assert it isn't occurring in your globe Earth world at the equator, so we can move back to my example that pummels this example, or are you just going to laugh hysterically and change the subject? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for giving you an example.
No,
I'm yet to be finished with it. It's taking far longer because even my ball example over a roundabout will get talked through, laughed through, not conceded. It's got to be broken down into tiny, tedious states.
I'm not going to concede.
So
I don't agree.
So you think there's no Coriolis on the equator? You don't agree? You stick by your stupid assertion there's no Coriolis at the equator?
Yeah. I mean, if you
Well, then the sun wouldn't move. Shut up. Shut up. Then the sun wouldn't be moving. That's claimed to be a Coriolis deflection seen in the sun, you stupid idiot. You're wrong.
So the sun moving across the sky is an apparent deflection?
Yes, that's correct. In your model, including the equator, it's claimed the sun has an apparent deflection at 15 degrees now. That's Coriolis drift. At the equator, you are wrong. I'd like you to concede how wrong you are, or I'll start shouting at you.
Oh, please do. Go for
it. Well, I'm giving you an opportunity to concede that the sun example is an example of Coriolis deflection.
The audience love it. Yeah.
Why? Why be a wanker? Why not just say, yeah, I understand. My stupid assertion that you don't have Coriolis on the equator is defied by the movement of the sun in a globe Earth model. Now, you keeping us here forever just means I never get to actually conclude the point that if the Earth is turning underneath, in this example, the sun, which it's claimed to be on a globe Earth that spins at 15 degrees an hour, then I'd throw a ball in the air and it would fly away from me at 1,000 miles an hour, as we are claimed to rotate underneath 1,000 miles an hour. Now, you're just keeping us here indefinitely, so we argue about what the sun does on the equator, rather than argue about the fact that Earth isn't turning underneath to give us a deflection in anything other than this claim to be luminary, the sun and the stars. Now, other than that, nothing's drifting. So it's not Earth turning underneath to cause the sun to appear to move at 15 degrees an hour on the equator. The sun just is moving above our heads. But that's not because we're turning underneath, because that would make us a non-inertial spinning reference frame, and stuff would drift away. It's even claimed to be the case by snipers and footballs. Yeah? It's claimed that there's a Coriolis deflection as we turn underneath, virus. The sun, bullets, footballs, drones, helicopters. But that would mean we'd have shortened flight times, and I'd throw a ball in the air and it'd drift away 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. And that doesn't happen. We're not turning underneath anything. Your pathetic denial that we don't have it at the equator, when it's still claimed to be the cause of the sun's movement through the sky, as it's claimed Earth turns underneath as a second non-inertial spinning reference frame, it's just stupid. It's just your delay tactics to get away from the actual point that we can debunk the notion we have 15 degrees an hour drift, as is absolutely claimed to be occurring, including the equator. It just doesn't happen. Nothing's drifting away from you 1,000 miles an hour when it leaves a claimed to be spinning reference frame. And when we point that out, you'll tell us it's retaining the velocity, even though that's sod all to do with us turning underneath it.
Yeah, I don't agree with basically just what you're saying. That's all. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but that doesn't mean I have to agree.
No, you don't understand, and you're a troll. What are you doing here, man?
Don't say I don't understand.
You're worse than Rumpus.
Understand what it is he's saying. It's not that hard.
No, you don't know, because every time you basically reply, you contradict yourself. You're an idiot. You don't get it.
What I say, they contradicted myself.
Wait, just carte blanche hand waved it all and said, I just don't agree. You didn't qualify what you don't agree with. You didn't give any rebuttal. You said, I just don't agree.
Well,
yeah, because your whole statement, I don't agree that just because there's no Coriolis on the equator that the...
Fuck you, man. I've just spent 10 minutes going through how there is Coriolis on the equator in your claim. It's supposed to be the cause of the sun's movement. You've not acknowledged a single fucking word of it. Yeah? You've muttered and stammered your way through it the entire fucking time. And now you're just going to declare it again just because there isn't any at the equator. Well, then the sun wouldn't move in your model. Yeah? And you're just refusing to let that go because it means I can't reassert the conclusory point that it would mean stuff's drifting away from you when it leaves the spinning Earth. And that doesn't happen. So you're just going to reassert it and ignore every word? You complete bastard.
I'm not even ignoring every word.
You ignored every fucking word about the fact that the equator is claimed to have 15 degrees an hour deviation as the sun moves from your position on a turning Earth moving underneath it on a globe Earth that spins. Now that would imply that we're turning underneath the sun on the equator at 15 degrees an hour as a second reference frame, and stuff would drift away from you when it left that reference frame. That's what the claim is. But you just reasserted that just because there isn't any Coriolis on the equator, there would be if we were turning. There isn't because we're not turning. Now you're going to keep it away from that conclusory part of the statement by describing there being no Coriolis effect on the equator. No, there isn't. We're not turning underneath anything. The equator part's irrelevant. I'll take it as a concession. No, there isn't any Coriolis on the equator. You're right, Virus. There isn't any Coriolis anywhere else either.
Thank you. Thank you for conceding.
Yeah, there's no Coriolis effect at the equator because Earth's not turning underneath. That's what I'm conceding to. No Coriolis effect in the face of a claim that there is. Coriolis effect on a turning Earth. No, there isn't any, and you agree there isn't any. The fact that you'll only agree on the equator is just because you're an idiot, and you won't concede to the fact that in your model it's claimed to be the cause of the sun's movement. You just ignored me because you're a wanker, and you've got nothing to do but completely ignore it and then parrot it again at the end of my demolition of that assertion in your model, because that's what you want. You want me arguing about your position in your model rather than annihilating it by pointing out we don't have any drift. We're not turning under anything. This bouncing guy, if we had Coriolis effect, would bounce out of the tractor, and if Earth was turning underneath, he'd fly away because Earth was turning underneath. Forget about the tractor. Be 1,000 miles an hour of the Earth turning underneath him that would be the problem, not the tractor. The fact that this is an example from your own side with absolutely no drift, when your claim is that things drift apart 1,000 miles an hour on the equator, will be met with you arguing all day about how we don't have Coriolis effect on the equator, but we do everywhere else. Like that's a reasonable position to take. No, it's not, because you're not arguing for your position that we should have drift anymore, are you? You're arguing that we shouldn't have drift on the equator. Oh, I still think we've got drift. I still think things drift apart at a different rate away from the equator, but I'll argue all day with you telling me how I should have it on the equator. Just pricks. Trying desperately to get me to argue for your position, rather than actually conceding, yeah, I'm supposed to have Coriolis on a turning Earth at the equator. Just doesn't happen. Nothing's drifting away from anything.
All right. This is starting to sound a lot like he is considering the reference frames ruined, but he still believes in them.
No. What?
Virus, why did the sun rise and sunset in your model?
The rotation of Earth.
Oh, that would be the rotation of Earth underneath the sun, right?
It's just a rotation of Earth, not underneath the sun.
As a second reference frame turning underneath.
Earth rotation?
Yeah. That's a second reference frame Coriolis deviation then. Do you understand that that's Coriolis deflection then? Not the sun's movement, but you turning underneath it on a turning Earth according to your claim. That would give us deflection. That's stuff drifting apart from one another though, Virus.
It's not an apparent deflection.
Yeah, it is. The sun's not actually whirling around the Earth in your model, is it? It's the Earth turning, causing it seem to move. That's Coriolis deflection. You just don't know what Coriolis effect is, Virus. It's as simple as that. We have to educate you every time you come here with this asserting to us that it's conservation of angular momentum. Absolutely batshit and crazy nonsense that's simply not true. We have to educate you in what Coriolis effect is, and then if you come here and say, well, we do have Coriolis, Earth is spinning, but you wouldn't see any Coriolis on a spinning Earth that is spinning at the equator. So we're into the begging the question part of you assuming Earth spinning, but arguing about whether or not on a spinning Earth we've got it at the equator. No, I'm not going to fucking do it all day. Yeah, if you don't understand your own stupid claim about what Earth should or shouldn't do, you shouldn't be arguing here. You don't understand how Coriolis effect works. You don't understand how Coriolis would be translatable to a globe Earth. You don't understand how, when translated to a globe Earth that's spinning, we don't see that effect. And you're going to refuse to let me make that point by talking all about the equator, some arbitrary line drawn on a sphere Earth in your world.
We can talk about something else. We ain't got to talk about the equator.
Wait, virus. So I just asked you, what is the cause of sunsets and sunrises in your model? You said it's the rotation of the Earth, right? So wherever I am, if I see the sun rising or setting, that's due to me on the ball spinning away from it, right?
Yeah, Earth rotation. All right.
Right. So it's not the actual sun moving across the sky. It's me on the ball moving away or towards it that makes it appear like it's moving across the sky.
Okay, it might appear like it's moving, but it's not appearing to deviate. It's not drifting away from its path.
What the fuck, man?
There's no apparent deviation.
It appears it might be moving, but it's not appearing. What the fuck are you blabbering about?
What he's doing is he's getting us. No, it's what they do all the time. I'm not going to fall into this trap. Let me just explain what's happening. He's denying a particular aspect of his own model so that we have to argue about how he's wrong about his model rather than debunking it. That's all they've ever done with Coriolis effect ever. I've drawn a line in the sand, and eventually, without causing offence, I hope everyone else catches up. No, I'm not going to sit here all day correcting him on how a globe Earth that spins works. Because then what are we doing? We're detailing all day long about how a globe Earth that spins should work. Fuck that. I'm tired of it. I don't give a shit if he knows how a globe Earth that spins works. If we're spinning at the equator, I'd throw a ball and it would fly away at 1,000 miles an hour as we turn underneath it. That doesn't happen. Now, whether or not he understands how a globe Earth that spins works is irrelevant. He's thick. I do understand how it works, and we don't see the effect because we're not spinning. And I'm going to get to that point every single time the Coriolis effect comes up. I'm not going to have the conclusory statement being, so we're going to spend 10 minutes getting it to the point where Virus understands that a globe Earth that's spinning has the equator subject to Coriolis effect. Well, what an achievement. We've convinced Virus that at the equator he should have Coriolis effect on a globe Earth that spins. What a win for Flat Earth. No, I'm not going to do that from now on. Sod that. No, what I'd much prefer to do is say, it's claimed we've got 15 degrees now, turn of the Earth. That gives us Coriolis effect as we spin underneath stuff not attached. Well, if we spin underneath stuff not attached, it would drift away at vast speeds the further out you got towards the equator in their model. I'd throw a ball, it would fly away from me 1,000 miles an hour on the equator. Am I going to argue all day about what a ball Earth claims about what should happen on the equator according to some dipshit that doesn't understand Coriolis? Or am I going to point out how it does not happen? We don't see 15 degrees now drift. Nothing's drifting away from me at any part of any location, ever. I never throw a ball in the air and find it flies away from me and drifts at 15 degrees an hour. That simply doesn't happen. There is no Earth-based Coriolis. There is no drift. Nothing ever drifts away from me. I don't give a crap whether or not you understand your model or not, Virus. You're an idiot.